He thought cheating had no consequences, so she erased 14 years of his life. There are two types of thieves in this world: the ones who hold a gun to your head in a dark alley, and the ones who smile, say they love you, and slowly drain your life away from the inside. Welcome back. I'm Marcus, and this is a story about a parasite who pushed his luck too far. Meet Elena. She was an industrial meteorologist. That means she worked 60-hour weeks analyzing weather patterns for heavy logistics. It was a world of cold steel, harsh winds, and unforgiving stress. And then there was Kyle, her boyfriend of 5 years. Kyle didn't do steel. Kyle didn't do stress. In fact, Kyle didn't do much of anything in the real world. He was a 24-year-old man who lived exclusively inside a 15-year-old fantasy MMORPG. In the game, he was a god, a warlord sitting on billions of virtual gold. But in reality, he was a leech, surviving on the blood, sweat, and bank account of a woman who loved him too much to see the truth. They met online when they were teenagers. It felt like a fairy tale back then. But fairy tales don't pay the rent, and neither did Kyle. Over the years, Elena had become his personal ATM. She paid for his food, his high-speed internet, and even his apartment across the country. She justified it. She told herself he was just finding his path, that he was a sweetheart going through a rough patch. But a rough patch shouldn't last half a decade. The first major crack in the foundation happened in November. Elena's car broke down. Her own bills piled up. For the first time, she was short on cash. She called Kyle, explaining she couldn't cover his rent that month. She asked him to get a temporary job. How did the 24-year-old sweetheart react? He didn't step up. He threw a temper tantrum like a spoiled toddler. He cried. He played the victim. He claimed if he moved back with his parents, they would abuse him. It was a blatant lie. His parents had always treated him like gold, but manipulative people always know which buttons to push. Elena, exhausted and emotionally drained, managed to calm him down, but the argument left a bitter taste. The next day, she reached out to his father. They found Kyle a simple warehouse job, $15 an hour, sweeping floors, lifting boxes, easy money. When she told him, Kyle scoffed. He refused to work in a shitty warehouse. His plan was to continue playing his game, all day, every day. He then had the audacity to suggest that Elena should get a second job. Let that sink in. The man sitting in his underwear playing elves and wizards told the industrial logistics director to work harder. Elena collapsed on her bed that night and cried for 2 hours. She considered ending it right there. She should have, because the parasite wasn't just feeding on her money anymore. He had found another host. December arrived. Elena, still trying to save the sinking ship, flew him across the country. For the first few days, the illusion held. Kyle had a small retail job now. He took her on dates. Everything felt perfect. But parasites are excellent at mimicking health just before they strike the hardest. The mask slipped on the fourth night. Kyle was in the shower. He left his phone on the counter. Careless, arrogant. Elena walked past it. Then the screen lit up. A Discord notification. 11 characters that shattered a 5-year foundation. When are you gonna leave her? The message read. In that exact second, Elena didn't cry. She didn't scream. A lesser person would have kicked the door down and snapped his neck. But Marcus always says, anger is loud. True revenge is absolutely silent. Kyle stepped out of the bathroom, oblivious to the fact that his executioner was standing right there. She forced the muscles in her face to form a smile, a fake porcelain mask. But inside, she hated him. If he had dropped dead on the floor, she would have simply stepped over him. That night, he went to sleep like a baby. The arrogance of a man who thinks he's untouchable. The moment he started snoring, the investigation began. She unlocked his phone and opened the crypt. 6 months. He had been cheating on her for 6 months. Right after she couldn't pay his rent, he found someone else to entertain him. She scrolled through thousands of messages. It was a descent into hell. He talked trash about her, called her emotionally abusive to gain sympathy, and the final nail in the coffin. He had sent her private, intimate photos to this other woman, so they could pick her apart physically, together. Elena wanted to vomit. The sheer disrespect was paralyzing. Morning came. The harsh sunlight offered no comfort. She walked out and saw him, eating her food, playing his game on her computer. He was an evil stranger sitting in her house, but she didn't kick him out. She gave him love. She played the perfect girlfriend one last time. She drove him to the airport. They had a somber, emotional goodbye. He walked through security, thinking he had won. Unbeknownst to him, he was walking straight into a slaughterhouse. Elena drove home in absolute silence. The adrenaline of her performance was fading. She walked into her empty apartment. The ghost of his presence still lingered in the air. Then, the dam broke. It wasn't sadness. It was pure, unadulterated rage. She kicked her heavy wooden bed frame, kicked it so hard the solid wood split right down the middle, a physical manifestation of a broken relationship. But breaking a bed frame wasn't enough. If only it had been his face. She wanted to break his heart, but she wanted it to truly hurt. She wiped her tears. The mourning period was over. The execution had begun. She sat down at her command center. The glowing monitor illuminated her face in the dark. First target, their joint account. A digital bank they had built together over the years. They used to call it their baby. A shared vault of virtual treasures? The old joke was, if they ever split, they'd divide it 50-50. Elena decided to honor that agreement. She logged in, took her exact half of the billions, and transferred it safely to her main character. Then, she looked at his half. She didn't keep it. That would be theft. Instead, she walked into the game's crowded plaza and gave it all away to absolute strangers. Every last coin. Even rare items were converted to cash and thrown to the wind. The joint bank was now a graveyard, completely empty. But she was just warming up. She looked down at her desk drawer. A memory surfaced from the dark. Kyle was lazy. So lazy, he often made Elena log into his main account to farm resources for him. She opened the drawer. There it was. A small crumpled piece of paper. The keys to the kingdom. The credentials to his 14-year-old masterpiece account. She didn't hesitate for a microsecond. She pulled up the login screen. Her fingers hovered over the mechanical keyboard. A pianist about to play a symphony of destruction. Clack, clack, clack. She typed the password in. Hit enter. The loading bar filled up. The heavy steel gates of his digital fortress swung wide open. Welcome to Kyle's life's work. It was breathtaking. Tens of thousands of hours condensed into pixels. His bank was a dragon's hoard. 4 distinct stacks of maximum cash. Over 8.5 billion coins. Decade-old rare items. Unobtainable trophies. The physical manifestation of his ego. Elena glanced at the clock. Kyle was currently 30,000 feet in the air. He had a 4-hour flight ahead of him. 4 hours where he was completely unreachable, powerless, and deaf to the world. She cracked her knuckles. The heist of the century was officially underway. Elena navigated his character to the Grand Exchange, the beating financial heart of the game. In the real world, it's a digital marketplace. But in Elena's mind, it was a pawn shop, and she was about to pawn 14 years of his life. She started with the armor, pieces he had spent months grinding for, sold to the lowest bidder, then the weapons, swords that had slayed digital dragons, now liquidated for spare change. It was a slow, meticulous process. It took hours to clear out the sheer volume of his hoarded wealth. But Elena had nothing but time. Kyle was still trapped in a metal tube in the sky. Item by item, the vault was stripped bare, until there was nothing left but raw liquid cash. 4 max cash stacks, over 8.5 billion coins. Now came the real question. What do you do with the life earnings of a parasite? Giving it away wasn't enough. That would make someone else happy. Elena wanted to waste it. She wanted to convert his legacy into an absolute insult. She logged into her own account and messaged an old contact, a guy who collected the absurd. This player had a very specific, bizarre hobby. He collected burnt food. In the game, burnt food has 0 utility. You can't eat it. You can't sell it. It is literally digital trash, but it can be traded. It was the perfect black hole for Kyle's wealth. Elena messaged the collector. "What is the most obscure, unwanted piece of trash you own?" The contact replied immediately. 2 words, burnt spider. And behold, the collector had exactly 6,083 of them. Elena smiled. A genuine, terrifying smile. It was the perfect monument to a man who had leeched off her for 5 years. She initiated the trade with the collector. On her side, she placed an entire max stack of Kyle's hard-earned gold, over 2.1 billion coins. On his side, the collector placed a mountain of charred, useless arachnids. The collector couldn't believe his luck. He was walking away, a billionaire. Elena hit the accept button. The heavy steel vault slammed shut. 2 billion coins. Thousands of hours of Kyle's life. Gone in a microsecond. Replaced by 6,000 dead burnt spiders, she placed them perfectly in the center of his otherwise empty bank. A morbid exhibit for him to return to. The first phase of the heist was complete. The burnt spiders sat in his vault like a curse. But Kyle still had about 6 billion coins left. A fortune. Elena could have just deleted it, erased it into the void. But why burn money when you've been paying a parasite's real-life rent for years? It was time for a shopping spree, paid for by the cheater. She went back to the Grand Exchange. First item on the list, time. In this game, bonds grant you premium membership. They cost a fortune. Elena bought 100 of them. She transferred them directly to her own account. Nearly 4 years of membership, paid in full. Next up, the hardware. She bought the most expensive elite armor and weapons available. Weapons Kyle could only dream of holding. Now they belonged to her. He still had about 1 billion coins left. Elena decided to invest it in herself. She bought massive amounts of supplies to level up her own expensive skills. Every level she gained was funded by his betrayal. By the late afternoon, the Empire was completely gutted. Kyle's bank account had dropped from 8.5 billion to a measly 150,000 coins. In this game, 150,000 is literal pocket change. You can't even buy a decent sword with it. Elena walked his character outside the exchange to dispose of the loose change. She saw a random low-level player standing by a fire, cooking pizzas. A hardworking guy just trying to make an honest virtual living. The exact opposite of Kyle. She opened a trade with the cook and dumped the last 150,000 coins into his apron. The cook was probably thrilled. Kyle's account was now mathematically at 0. Elena went back to the bank to admire her work. Nothing but 6,000 charred spiders sitting in a sterile, empty vault. But it felt like it was missing something. A final, poetic touch. She walked his character out into the nearby dirt fields. She found the corpse of a low-level monster and picked up a single dirty pile of bones. She walked back to the bank and placed the bones right next to the spiders. It was petty. It was absurd. It was beautiful. The financial ruin was complete. But the real torture was about to begin. Some people think taking a man's money is the worst thing you can do to him. They lack imagination. Money can be re-earned. But an identity? A reputation? Once that's shattered, it's gone forever. In the gaming world, Kyle wasn't just rich. He was an elite. He had what they call a pure account. That meant He had maximized his offensive power while keeping his defense stat perfectly at level 1. A glass cannon takes thousands of hours of paranoid, careful clicking to ensure you never accidentally level up your defense. Elena knew this. It was his ultimate source of pride, his ego incarnate. So, she walked his legendary warlord character out into a dirty swamp. She found the weakest, most pathetic monster in the game, a giant rat. She went into his combat settings, and she clicked defensive stance. She let the character hit the rat once, twice. Then the fireworks went off. Congratulations, your defense level is now 6, irreversible, permanent. His elite status was ruined forever. He was now just another mediocre player. But the demolition wasn't over. Kyle had a house, a sprawling multi-billion coin mansion that took years to construct. Elena teleported there. She stood in the grand hallway and activated building mode. In building mode, you are God. You can create, or you can destroy. She clicked the master bedroom. Delete room. It vanished into cyberspace. She clicked the throne. Deleted. The gardens. Deleted. Room by room. In minutes, the architectural masterpiece was reduced to a flat, empty plot of green grass. There is no insurance in this game. To rebuild, he needs billions. Billions that are now burnt spiders. Bye-bye, Casa de Cheater. Now for his social life? Kyle had a friends list full of online buddies. The people he bragged to. The people he lied to. Elena opened the global chat. She typed a message acting as Kyle. I cheated on my girlfriend, who pays for everything, and I'm completely proud of it. She hit send. And before anyone could reply, she opened the friends list. Delete, delete, delete. She removed every single person. Total isolation. He was now alone in the dark. Finally, the cherry on the revenge cake? The ultimate brand. The game allows you to change your username once a month, 12 characters maximum. She typed out a name so humiliating, so shameful, he would be forced to wear it like a scarlet letter for 30 days. The execution was over. 4 hours later, Flight 407 touched down on the tarmac. Kyle woke up from his nap, ignorant, arrogant, ready to resume his parasitic life. He turned off airplane mode. The notifications flooded in, but not the ones he expected. Messages from his guild. Messages from random players. Confused, mocking. Panic set in. He rushed home to his parents' house, ignoring everything else. He burst into his dark bedroom and booted up the computer. His hands were shaking. He typed in his password. The loading screen felt like an eternity. He spawned in, but not in his glorious multi-billion coin mansion. He was standing in a dirty swamp, wearing nothing but default peasant clothes. Confusion turned to terror. He opened his stats menu. Defense, level 6. The glass cannon was shattered. The pure account was tainted forever. He started breathing heavily. A glitch, he muttered. It has to be a glitch. He used his home teleport, desperate to see his fortress. He arrived at a completely empty, barren patch of dirt. The mansion was wiped from existence. His heart hammered against his ribs. The final test. The bank. He sprinted his character to the nearest vault. His fingers clicked the banker icon. The heavy steel doors of his financial empire opened. 0 coins, 0 armor, 0 weapons. Just a single, grotesque pile of 6,000 charred, burnt spiders, and right next to them, a single pile of dirty bones. Then he looked up at the top left corner of the screen. His username, the brand, the scarlet letter, cheater. 14 years of his life, tens of thousands of hours, reduced to ashes and insect corpses. The psychological collapse was absolute. He didn't just cry, he wailed. He grabbed his phone, his fingers violently punching the glass screen. A barrage of hateful, aggressive, desperate text messages flooded Elena's phone. He followed it up with pictures of himself crying, the ultimate manipulation tactic of a cornered parasite. 2,000 miles away, Elena was sitting by her window, sipping a glass of red wine. She looked at the frantic messages. She didn't feel an ounce of pity. She felt vindicated. She began to type her final response, the official execution order. Elena didn't write an angry essay. Anger shows you still care. She wrote a clinical cold autopsy of their 5-year relationship. She detailed exactly what she knew, the 6 months of cheating, the exact quotes from his Discord. She left him zero room to lie, spin, or manipulate, but she needed to make sure he never ever contacted her again. So, she dropped the legal guillotine. She brought up the intimate photos he shared, a severe crime in the eyes of the law. She threatened a massive lawsuit and a formal cease and desist order if he ever breathed in her direction. She didn't actually plan to sue him. She was just playing chess. She wanted to paralyze him with fear, and terrify him, she did. 2,000 miles away, Kyle read the final message. The fake, manipulative tears stopped instantly, replaced by a cold, sobering terror. He finally realized he wasn't dealing with a heartbroken, naive girl anymore. He was dealing with an executioner who held his life in her hands. Panic-stricken, he frantically typed a response, trying to apologize, to beg, to grovel. But before his thumb could even hit the send button, blocked. On his phone, on Discord, on every platform. The digital door slammed shut in his face, locking him out forever. The parasite was officially permanently severed from the host. He was left completely alone, with no money, a shameful name, and 6,000 burnt spiders. Back in her city, Elena closed her laptop. She picked up the crumpled piece of paper with his passwords, the keys to his kingdom, now just worthless garbage. She poured the rest of her red wine down the sink. The storm outside had finally passed. She went to bed, and for the first time in 5 years, she slept peacefully. No snoring parasite next to her, no financial anchor dragging her down. Morning broke. The sunlight piercing through the blinds didn't feel harsh anymore. She walked out of her apartment, breathing in the cold, crisp air. She was completely free, and her ledger was perfectly balanced. They say when you take away an addict's substance, the real withdrawals begin. For 14 years, Kyle's brain was wired to receive digital dopamine. Every level up, every gold coin. Now, the drip was gone. The machine was unplugged. He tried to log back in the next day, a glutton for punishment. He spawned next to his pile of burnt spiders, his level 6 defense mocking him. He thought about rebuilding, starting over, but the mountain was too high. You can't recreate a 14-year masterpiece when your spirit is broken. He closed the game, and for the first time in his adult life, he had to look at the real world, and the real world was not kind to parasites without a host. The end of the month arrived, and with it, the bills, rent, phone, groceries, the mundane monsters he had ignored for years. He reached for his phone to call his personal ATM, but the ATM was disconnected forever. He had to face his parents, the ones he claimed were abusive. They weren't abusive. They were just finally done coddling a grown man. They laid down the law. No more free rides. Get a job or get out on the street. He had no digital millions to fall back on. He had no generous girlfriend. He was cornered by his own consequences. So, remember that shitty warehouse job he scoffed at? The one that paid $15 an hour? Desperation is a funny thing. It crushes your ego into a fine powder. He had to crawl back to his father's friend and beg for that exact position. The warlord who once ruled a digital empire was now wearing a high-vis vest, clocking in for the morning shift. His new reality was lifting heavy boxes, sweeping dusty floors, and taking orders. 8 hours a day, standing on his feet until his back ached. No more sitting in a comfortable chair. No more free food magically appearing on his desk. He had insulted Elena for working hard. He had told her to get a second job. Now, karma was forcing him to physically feel every single dollar he had stolen from her over the years. Every time he swept up a pile of dirt, I imagine he thought of the burnt spiders, a minimum wage peasant in the real world, a beggar in the virtual one. He thought he could use people without paying the toll. But the toll collector always comes. So, what is the lesson here? Is it about video games? No. It's about the concept of the parasite, the people who take and take and take. They mistake your kindness for weakness. They think your patience is a blank check. Kyle thought he had outsmarted the system. He thought he could live in a fantasy forever. But reality doesn't care about your digital gold. Reality demands a toll. And Elena? She became the toll collector. She didn't scream. She didn't break his jaw. That's amateur hour. She surgically extracted the one thing he valued more than life itself. She left him with zero defense, zero dignity, and a vault full of charred insects. Months later, Elena got promoted. Her bank account healed. She thrived. And Kyle? He's still at that warehouse, still sweeping the same floors, still clocking in at 6 a.m. Every paycheck goes to his rent. He has no time for video games anymore. He's trapped in the real world, a prison of his own making. People often say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is a dish best served legally. Elena didn't break a single law. She just used his own passwords against him. The ledger is balanced. The parasite is dead. Case closed. This is Karma Delivered. And I am your host, Marcus. If you enjoyed watching this 14-year empire burn to the ground, hit the like button. It feeds the algorithm, and it feeds my soul. Subscribe to the channel. We have plenty more executions scheduled because there are always more entitled people out there begging for reality to hit them. Tell me in the comments down below, what would you have bought with 8.5 billion coins? Would you have bought the burnt spiders? Or something more sinister? Let the world know your flavor of vengeance. Until next time, keep your circle small. Don't pay rent for parasites. And always log out of your accounts. Good night.